Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to today's Friday Reflections on this Friday, the 24th of June, 2022. I hope you are well wherever you are tuning into this from and having a good evening. Today, I would like to read from this book, which is part of Imam Al-Ghazali's Ihya Ulum. It's actually the first part of the opening part of the book, translated into English by, let me see which parts this translated. This particular part is translated by Nabih Amin Faris and published by International Islamic Publishers in New Delhi. Edition 1988. And I want to read something from section 1, which starts on page 2 of this particular edition of the book. Obviously, that will vary depending on which edition or translation of the book that you have. But it's quite close to the beginning of the book. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. On the value of knowledge, instruction, and learning, together with its evidence in tradition and from reason. The excellence of knowledge. The evidence for the excellence of knowledge in the Quran is manifest. In the words of Allah, God bears witness that there is no God but He, and the angels and men, endued with knowledge, established in righteousness. See then how God has mentioned Himself first, the angels second, and men endowed with knowledge third. This is from Surah 3, Ayah 16. And there, Allah mentions Himself first, the angels second, and then people endowed with knowledge. In this, you really have honor, excellence, distinction, and rank. And again, Allah said, God will raise in rank those of you who believe, as well as those who are given knowledge. According to Ibn Abbas, the learned men rank 700 grades above believers, between each two of which is a distance 500 years long. Said God, say, shall those who know be deemed equal with those who do not know? This too is in the Quran. Surah 43, Ayah 12. Shall those who know be deemed equal with those who do not know? God also said, none fear God but the wise among His servants. And again, say, God is witness enough betwixt me and you, and whoever hath the knowledge of the book. This I mention to you in order to show that it was possible only through the power of knowledge. God also said, but they to whom knowledge hath been given said, woe to you. The reward of God is better for him who believes and does right. Showing thereby the great importance of the hereafter is appreciated through knowledge. And again, God said, these parables do we set forth for men, and none understands them save those who know. God also said, but if they were to refer it to the apostle, Prophet Sallallahu, and to those in authority amongst them, those of them who would elicit the information would know it. He thus made the knowledge of his will dependent upon their efforts to find it out, and placed them next to the prophets in the ability to make it known. Important point here that Allah is saying in the Quran, in a number of places, Allah highlights the importance of gaining knowledge, and also of those people who have knowledge, that they are next to the prophets and that they're the heirs of the prophets. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as it is said in a hadith Qudsi, that he is a hidden treasure and he wanted to be known. This is connected to what Imam Al-Ghazali is discussing here with what is mostly just quotes from the Quran. This emphasizes the importance of learning within Islam and gaining knowledge. Now, obviously, people will vary in their ability to gain knowledge. Not everybody is as gifted a learner as everybody else. But we should at least aim to gain knowledge, and we should be doing something, some kind of study, something to kind of gain knowledge. It is a duty upon every Muslim to do that to the best of their ability. Obviously, different people may have different abilities in certain areas. So that's okay, you can explore that. But we should be gaining knowledge, a knowledge which is useful to the community. And as was mentioned in this first, as Ghazali quotes, God also said, but they to whom knowledge has been given said, woe to you, the reward of God is better for him who believes and does right. You see, there's a connection here between gaining knowledge and doing what is right. And of course, those who gain knowledge, providing they have good hearts and good intentions, will use that knowledge to benefit other people, and they'll also have a better idea of what is right and what is wrong, because this too is knowledge. How can you act in the right way, or you'll make many mistakes if you do not have knowledge and you do not know what is right. Sometimes it's simple and our heart can tell us, but in more complicated situations, you need to have knowledge to be able to discern what is right. It's not always so straightforward. But also Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to seek him out. Well, think about it. All of the angels, they are 100% believer. 100%. And they're not disobedient. They just do everything Allah says. If that is what Allah wanted of human beings, we would be angels. There would be no need for this creation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us as human beings because there is a particular mission for us in this life, to seek out, to understand through our own efforts. And of course, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, if we take one step towards Allah, Allah takes 10 steps towards us. You head in the right direction and Allah will make it easier for you. But we should at least be aiming in that direction. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala highlights the importance of learning. What have you done? What have I done? What have any of us done over the past so many years to learn? And what have we learned? Have we just learned whatever we needed to learn in order to profit from it financially? Or have we learned knowledge for the sake of learning knowledge and then put that to use, both for us spiritually to be able to grow and also for the benefits of humanity? Anyway, I'll return back to what Imam Al-Ghazali has written. As to the evidence of the value of knowledge in tradition, Al-Aqba, the apostle of God said, "Whom God doth love, he giveth knowledge of religion, and guideth him into the straight path." And again, the learned men are the heirs of the prophets. It is also well known that there is no rank above that of prophethood, no honor higher than its inheritance. The Prophet ﷺ said, "What is in the heavens and in the earth intercedes for the learned man." And what rank is higher than that of him for whom the angels of the heavens and earth labor, interceding with God on his behalf, while he is preoccupied with himself? Muhammad ﷺ said, "Wisdom adds honor to the noble and exalts the slave until he attains to the level of kings." SubhanAllah. Think about that hadith. Wisdom adds honor to the noble and exalts the slave until he attains the level of kings. The gaining of knowledge is so powerful, it can even take someone who is a slave to the level of kings. And there's an example in the Quran and also within the Torah of where this has actually happened with Yusuf alayhi salam, who was by his brothers put in a well and ended up going into slavery. He had to live as a slave. He had no choice in the matter. But as he was someone who was knowledgeable, and he'd spent his life learning before he was a slave and even obviously after this, his first master in Egypt saw his ability and put him to work, not in hard labor, but looking after the books of the house and things which required knowledge, which would have also given Yusuf alayhi salam the opportunity to further his studies. See, this is Quranic. Imam Al-Ghazali is Quranic in what he's discussing. It's not just Imam Al-Ghazali's words. And that is a hadith of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. Wisdom attains honor, wisdom adds honor to the noble and exalts the slave until he attains to the level of kings. Let me see, where's the reference for this? 5, no, 6 probably. Major, looks like. But it's a Quranic principle as well. Muhammad Sallallahu said again, the Prophet Sallallahu pointed out this relative to the benefits of wisdom in this world, since it is well known that the hereafter is superior and longer lasting. Muhammad Sallallahu said again, 2 qualities the hypocrite lacks: good intentions and religious insight. SubhanAllah. Do not doubt tradition then, because of the hypocrisy of some contemporary jurisprudence. Theirs is not the jurisprudence which the Prophet ﷺ had in mind. The definition of jurisprudence will come later. I mean, subhanAllah, that could have been written today. Do not doubt tradition then because of the hypocrisy of some contemporary jurisprudence. Theirs is not the jurisprudence which the Prophet ﷺ had in mind. I might make that into a meme. I mean, seriously, that could have been written at the moment. For a jurisprudent to know that the hereafter is better than this world is, after all, the lowest type of knowledge he can possess. Should it prove to be true and prevail, it would clear him of hypocrisy and deceit. The Prophet ﷺ said, the best of men is the learned believer, who, if he is needed, will be useful, and if dispensed with, he will be self-sufficient. Think of the wisdom in that. The best of men is the learned believer, who, if he is needed, he will be useful. Think about that. Obviously, if you're a learned person and you're called upon to help, you are able to do something useful. But if you're dispensed with, you will be self-sufficient. You'll be able to look after yourself because you have knowledge, you know things. And again, he said, the Prophet ﷺ said, belief is like unto a nude who should be clothed with piety, ornamented with modesty, and should have knowledge for progeny. In other words, if you just have belief, you're naked. Belief shouldn't just be belief. It should be clothed with taqwa, ornamented with modesty, and you should have knowledge, so you've got something to pass on. And again, the nearest people to prophethood are the people of knowledge and the warriors of jihad. The former have led men to what the prophets have proclaimed, and the latter have wielded their swords on its behalf. No, this is not like what people think of jihad today. This is when people are fighting for the right reasons, like the concept of a just war, or fighting for justice, or to keep the peace. He also said, the passing away of a whole tribe is more tolerable than the death of one learned man. SubhanAllah. That is really placing a great deal of emphasis on the value of knowledge. And again, men are like ores of gold and silver. The choicest among them during the Jahiliyyah days are also the best during the days of Islam, providing they see the light. The best during the days of Jahiliyyah were also knowledgeable people. And so the best after, in the time of Islam, as long as they have faith, yeah. Because other qualities are still qualities. Some qualities are universal. Knowledge and being a knowledgeable person is something that has been valued by many different societies. It's not something which is unique to Islam. During ancient China, knowledgeable scholars such as Confucius were greatly valued. During the Enlightenment, during Europe, people like Galileo, they led the way and brought Europe into its own enlightenment. Took us out of the Dark Ages. The value of knowledgeable people, it's something which is a universal thing. The Prophet ﷺ also said, on the day of resurrection, the ink of the learned men will be likened to the blood of the martyrs. And again, whoever preserves the law, 40 traditions, whoever preserves of the law 40 traditions, 40 hadith, in order to transmit them unto my people, I shall, on the day of resurrection, be an intercessor, a witness on his behalf. Muhammad ﷺ also said, any one of my people who will preserve 40 hadiths will, on the day of resurrection, face God as a learned jurisprudent. And again, whoever will become versed in the religion of God, God will relieve him of his worries and will reward him whence he does not reckon. Reward him, sorry, in a way that he doesn't expect. The Prophet also said, God said unto Abraham, O Abraham, verily, I am knowing and I love every knowing person, every scholar, every knowledgeable person. And the Prophet said, there are two groups among my people who, when they become righteous, the populace becomes righteous. And when they become corrupt, the populace becomes corrupt. These are the rulers and the jurisprudence. Again, he said, should the day come wherein I increase not in knowledge, wherewith to draw nearer to God, let the dawn of that day be accursed. Emphasis here, the Prophet ﷺ actually said, there's two groups of people. If those people become good people, the whole of society will become good. And if they become bad people, the whole of society will become bad. One of them is the leaders, and the other one is the scholars. You could even say in the Western sense, the academics. The leaders and the scholarly people are good people. Of course, they're going to have a good influence on the rest of society. But if they're bad people, they also are the people that know exactly how to corrupt everything. Because they have the knowledge to do it. And this is also why we need knowledge to counter knowledge, because there's knowledge which is used in a bad way. So good people need to have knowledge in order to be able to counter that. It's no use just believing that Allah is going to make everything right. Allah expects us to do our part. And then Allah will help. But if we're not even prepared to lift a finger, we're not even prepared to open a book, we're not even prepared to read a few pages, why would Allah make things easier for us? For what reason do we deserve it? Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Concerning the superiority of knowledge to worship and martyrdom, the Prophet ﷺ said, the superior rank the learned man holds in relation to the worshipper is like the superior rank I hold in relation to the least of men. See how he placed knowledge on an equal footing with prophecy and belittled the value of practice without knowledge. Despite the fact that the worshipper may not be ignorant of the worship which he observes. Moreover, without this knowledge, there would have been no worship. The Prophet ﷺ said, the superior rank the learned man holds over the worshipper is similar to the superiority of the moon when it is full over the other stars. And again, there will, on the day of resurrection, intercede before God the prophets, then the learned, then the martyrs. Great then is the state which ranks next to prophecy and stands over martyrdom, the merits of the latter notwithstanding. The Prophet ﷺ said, God was not worshipped with anything better than learned religion. Verily, a single jurisprudent is more formidable to Satan than 1,000 worshippers. For everything has its foundation, and the founding of this religion is jurisprudence. And again, the best part of your faith is the easiest, and the best form of worship is jurisprudence. The Prophet said, the learned believer holds a rank 70 degrees higher than that of the ordinary believer. And again, verily, I have come upon a time whose jurisprudence are many, and the Quran readers as well as preachers are few, whose beggars are rare and givers numerous, whereas deeds are better than knowledge. But there will come a time whose jurisprudence are few, and preachers many, whose givers are few, and beggars numerous, wherein knowledge is better than works. The Prophet ﷺ also said, between the learned and the worshipper are 100 degrees, each two of which are separated by the extent of a racing horse run in 70 years. The Prophet ﷺ was asked, O Apostle of God, what works are best? To which he replied, your knowledge of God. He was then asked, which knowledge do you mean? He answered, your knowledge of God. Again he was asked, we inquire about works, and you reply concerning knowledge. Muhammad ﷺ then said, with your knowledge of God, a few works will suffice, but without such knowledge, no works, however numerous, avail. The Prophet ﷺ said, on the day of resurrection, God will first raise the worshippers and then the learned, to whom he will say, O you company of the learned, I did not imbue you with my knowledge, but for my knowledge of you. Moreover, I did not imbue you with my knowledge in order to torment you. Go ye, therefore, for verily I have forgiven you. I mean, you know, it's shocking when you think how ignorant a lot of people in the Ummah are today, even amongst the people who are holding the positions of Imams and scholars. Immense value that Islam places upon gaining knowledge, learning, reading, studying. But as the Prophet ﷺ predicted in his hadith, in his time, he said that they were living in a time where jurisprudence were many and Quran readers, whereas preachers were few and beggars were rare and givers were numerous. And in that situation, deeds were better than knowledge. But he predicted and said, there will come a time when the jurisprudence are few, the scholars are few, but the preachers are many, but the givers are few, beggars are numerous. And in that time, knowledge is better than works. I mean, subhanAllah, could he not have described the situation we find today amongst Muslim communities? Could he not have described it any better? We have so many preachers today. But how many scholarly people? I mean, genuinely scholarly people, which means people who are academic in their approach, not just people who can quote the odd ayah of Quran and Hadith in their speech, but people who are academic in their approach. They actually understand what they're reading, what they're talking about. But this is what we should be aspiring to be. And the Prophet ﷺ said that if you have knowledge of God, even a few works will suffice. But without knowledge, no works, however numerous, will suffice. And this is the importance of gaining knowledge within Islam. Do you not want your deeds to be accepted? Prophet Muhammad is saying that the acceptance of your deeds is connected. And not just your deeds, but the acceptance of your deeds and also your worship is connected to your knowledge. And why is this? You have to understand what you are doing. Who are you doing this for? And what are you doing? What are you aiming to achieve? That is the arena of knowledge. If you don't have knowledge, what are you doing? As Muslims, we're not supposed to just worship for the sake of worship. Of course, a lot of worship is blessed if you understand what you're doing and you have knowledge, and you're doing it for the right reasons, with pure intention, without hypocrisy. Of course, it's very blessed. But you're not supposed to be doing it just for the sake of it. All the things that we do in worship are actually good for us. We're doing them because they're beneficial for our souls and for our communities. Allah is not in need of our worship. We are in need of it because we're deeply in need of Allah. We're utterly dependent upon Allah. We're the ones who need it. And ibadah comes in many different forms. Worship within Islam is not just prayers and fasting. Any kind of good action, if you do it with Bismillah, is an act of worship. Most of which is service to your community, service to humanity. And that can come in so many different forms. And the more knowledge we have, the more we understand that and the more different ways that we can apply it. It could even be being a lawyer in a court that is fighting for the right kind of cases that are actually benefiting good people, protecting them from harm and ensuring they get justice. Or it could be being a doctor who is healing people and curing people. Or it could be being a teacher or a lecturer in an academic institution who's teaching people so that they can actually go out and have careers and achieve great things themselves. It could be all manner of things. All of that could be worship if you do it for the sake of Allah. Imam Al-Ghazali continues and says, as to the evidence of the value of knowledge in the sayings of the companions, Ali ibn Abi Talib said to Kumail, "O you perfect of knowledge, knowledge is better than riches, for knowledge guards you, whereas you guard riches. Knowledge governs, while riches are governed. Riches diminish with spending, but knowledge increases therewith. And again, the learned is superior to the fasting, praying, self-mortifying man. Should the learned die, a gap would be created in Islam by his death, and no one would fill this gap save one of his successors." Ali said, "Learning is the glory of mankind. The wise are beacons on the road to truth. Man is worth his knowledge, nothing more. The fool will be his inveterate foe. Knowledge is man's hope of life immortal. Man may die, but wisdom liveth forever. Subhanallah. Abu al-Aswad said, nothing is more precious than knowledge. While kings rule over men, they are ruled by the learned. While kings rule over men, they are ruled by the learned. The kings are ruled by knowledgeable people. Because without knowledgeable people, they can't rule. So they become dependent upon their scholars, upon their advisors, sometimes for good or for ill. If they're good scholars and good advisors, it will be very good for society and very good for the king. If they have ulterior motives, those learned people will lead them astray and make a lot of trouble. But either way, kings become dependent on their advisors. And that's true today also of elected rulers. Ibn Abbas said, Solomon, the son of David, was asked to choose between knowledge, wealth, or power. But he chose knowledge and was thereby blessed with wealth and power as well. Ibn al-Mubarak was asked, who constitute humanity? To which he replied, the learned. It was then said, and who are the kings? He answered, the ascetics. And who? He was asked, constitute the lowest class among them. Those, he said, who in the name of religion grow fat in the world. Thus only the learned did, in Ibn al-Mubarak, regard as belonging to mankind, because it is knowledge which distinguishes man from the other animals. Furthermore, man is a human being, not because of his physical prowess, for physically the camel is his superior, not because of his size, for the elephant is larger, not because of his courage, for the lion is more courageous, not because of his appetite, for the ox has the greater, not because of coitus, for the least of birds is more virile than he, but rather by virtue of his noble aims and ideals. As a matter of fact, he was created to know. One of the wise men said, who that I might know what thing was attained by him whom knowledge has escaped, and what thing has escaped him who hath attained knowledge. The Prophet ﷺ said, whoever has been given the Quran and thinks that anyone has been given something better, he has degraded what Allah has exalted. Fath al-Mawsili said, inquiring, would not the sick die if he is given no food or drink or medicine? They said, yes. To which he said, similarly the heart will perish if it is cut off from wisdom and knowledge for 3 days. He did indeed speak the truth, for the nourishment of the heart, on which its life depends, is knowledge and wisdom, just as the nourishment of the body is food. Whoever lacks knowledge has an ailing heart, and his death is certain. Yet he is not aware of his doom, because the love of this world and his concern wherewith have dulled his senses, just as a shock from fright may momentarily do away with the pain of a wound, although the wound be real. Thus, when death frees him from the burdens of this world, he will realize his doom and will, though to no avail, greatly regret it. This is like the feeling of a person who has attained safety after having been through danger, and like that of a man who has just recovered from his drunkenness. We seek refuge in Allah from the day when all things will be brought to life. Men are asleep, but at death they will awake. Al-Ghazali said, the ink of the learned will be likened to the blood of the martyrs, and the former will prove superior. Ibn Masud said, seek ye knowledge while it be found. It will be veiled when its narrators pass away. Verily, by him in whose hand is my life, several men who died martyrs in the cause of God would rather that at resurrection God would raise them up as learned men, for what they see of the veneration accorded to the learned. No one is born learned, but knowledge is only the result of learning. Ibn Abbas said, I would rather spend a part of the night in learned discussion than in continual prayer. The same was related of Abu Huraira and Ahmed ibn Hanbal, the great Imam. Al-Hasan said that in the words of God, give us good in this world and good in the next. The good in this world meant knowledge and worship, while that of the next signified paradise. A wise man was once asked, what things shall we possess? He replied, those things which you will not lose in the event of shipwreck, meaning thereby knowledge. While by shipwreck it is said, he meant the decomposition of the body through death. A certain wise man said, whoever takes wisdom through his bridle will be acclaimed by men as their leader, and whoever is known for his wisdom will be looked upon with respect. Al-Shafi'i said, one of the noble things about knowledge is that he who is given a portion of it, no matter how small, rejoices, while he who is deprived of it grieves. Umar said, O men, seek ye knowledge, for verily God has a mantle of love, which he casts upon him who seeks knowledge, even a single section. Should he then commit an offense, God will remonstrate with him thrice in order not to rob him of his mantle, even though that offense may persist with him until he dies. Al-Ghanaf said, the learned man came very near being God's, and all power which is not supported by knowledge is doomed. Salim Abdul-Jad said, my master bought me for 300 dirhams and later set me free. Thereupon I said, what shall I take up for livelihood? Finally, I took up learning, and no sooner had a year passed than the Prince of Mecca called upon me, but I would not receive him. Al-Zubair ibn Abi Bakr said, my father had written me while in Iraq, saying, go after knowledge. Should you become poor, it will be your wealth, and should you become rich, it will be your embellishment. This has been related amongst the exhortations of Luqman to his son. He also said, sit in the company of the learned and keep close to them, for verily God quickens the heart with the light of wisdom, as he refreshes the earth with the rain of heaven. A certain wise man said, when the learned dies, the fish of the sea, as well as the fowl of the air, will mourn him. When a learned man dies, the fish of the sea, as well as the birds of the air, will mourn him. When his face shall disappear, his memory will not be forgotten. Az-Zuhri said, knowledge is glorious and is not treasured except by the glorious. SubhanAllah. The introduction, the beginning, first section of Ihya Ulum, the book of knowledge. May Allah grant that we are among those people who are learning, people who gain knowledge and gain wisdom. May Allah grant us success in this life and in the hereafter. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala ali Sayyidina Muhammadin wa barik wa sallim al-Fatiha. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Maliki yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdina as-siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladina an'amta alayhim. Ghayril maghdubi alayhim. Thank you for joining me this evening for this Friday Reflections. I hope you enjoyed that and it's given you much food for thought. Have a very good evening wherever you are. And I will be doing my Sufi meditation, inshallah, on Monday at around about 6 p.m. as per usual. If you are in the Birmingham area, you are welcome to come along to the talk and the meditation at the chaplaincy at St. Francis Hall in the University of Birmingham. And if you can't, for whatever reason, you're most welcome to join us online. We'll be live on Facebook and Instagram as usual, inshallah. I wish you all a very good evening. And until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May the peace and blessings of Allah be with you all.